The Himalayas are one of the world's greatest biodiversity strongholds, stretching across multiple countries and spanning tropical forests to alpine meadows. They support thousands of unique species while providing freshwater, climate regulation, and other critical ecosystem services to nearly 2 billion people. Yet, this extraordinary landscape is under growing pressure from climate change, habitat fragmentation, unsustainable development, and changing land use practices, making the conservation of Himalayan ecosystems one of the most defining conservation challenges of our time. Today, I am joined by Dr. Nakul Chettri, Senior Fellow and Associate Director of ATREE's Himalayan Initiative. Over 2 decades, he has worked extensively at the intersection of biodiversity conservation, ecosystem restoration, climate resilience, and transboundary landscape management across the eastern Himalayas. In this episode, we'll discuss how science and local stewardship can work together to conserve one of the planet's most important mountain ecosystems, the challenges in balancing conservation with development, and what the future holds for biodiversity across the Himalayas. So, welcome, Nakul, to the podcast. It's a pleasure to have you on today.
It's my pleasure too. Thank you very much for involving me.
You were born and raised in the Himalayas. How did your upbringing shape your relationship with the mountains and eventually lead you into conservation?
Actually, there are 3 reasons behind this. I'm born and brought up in Kurseong, and from Kurseong, the Kanchenjunga mountain is visible from my window. Always seeing that Kanchenjunga was an inspiration for me, standing tall, standing wide, inspiring people. The tourism is blooming. We're admiring. So that brought me the attention towards Kanchenjunga landscape per se. And the second one is when I was studying in class 10 and 9, I was interested more on geography. One teacher came in class 8 and 9 and 10, and the way he taught biology also brought a lot of changes to me to bring interest towards nature, biodiversity, animals. So when I was raising my interest towards this, then I got an opportunity after my master in geology. And then after the master degree, I got an opportunity to do a work as a scholar for one project called Sikkim Biodiversity and Ecotourism Project. So that project was to look at the impact of tourism on mountain biodiversity. So that again laid another stepping stone towards understanding more deeply with a scientific vigor to understand biodiversity and mountain aspects. So these are the 3 changing milestones which brought my interest towards mountain and its ecosystem and biodiversity.
The Himalayas are often discussed as a single entity, but the Eastern Himalayas are quite distinct. What makes this region so ecologically and culturally unique?
Interesting question. If you look at the Himalayan range, then it looks like an arc. If you go to Arunachal Pradesh, Brahmaputra, and further down Mizoram and Manipur, and also towards the Myanmar Valley, then you'll see that the mountain range is bending towards south from the Salween River. To look at those complexities, then there are 2 dimensions which enriches the Eastern Himalaya. One is elevation gradient, the altitudinal gradient across the Himalayan range. That is one aspect which are enriching the biodiversity. The second one is low latitude and elevation. So you will see some mountains coming in the low tropical area as well. So that brings a very unique type of location of animals and plants, and more so because the creation was through continental drift. So that also brought different elements from different zones. So the enrichment was there. And apart from that, if you look at the microclimate, compared to Western Himalaya or compared to other places, the Eastern Himalaya is having more rain. There is more elevation gradient in terms of altitude. Because of this microclimatic conditions, enabling microclimatic conditions, the richness is there. So that is one aspect of biodiversity richness, but you have also cultural dimension. So if you look at the history, migration pattern of human civilization, then a lot of people came from Tibetan Plateau, then Europe and Tibetan Plateau, and then came to Southeast Asia. So during that pattern, the different ethnic groups evolved based on the situation, based on the location, based on the availability of food, based on the different practices and culture. So that's why the whole range of biodiversity also gave them opportunity to evolve and bring new cultural aspects. So you can say that when biodiversity is rich, then again, the cultural diversity also evolved through collaterally. So this is why there's a different culture as well as richness in ethnic diversity, food diversity of each of the ethnic groups. So largely because of the biodiversity that is there. Thank you.
You are part of ATREE's Himalayan initiative. Could you just introduce us to the initiative and what is the main aim of this project?
Actually, in 1996, this ATREE was established in Bangalore, largely to look at the conservation and development dilemma, where we tend to see that human beings are destroying nature, and nature is those kind of dimensions where those kind of narratives were created earlier. And you can also refer this to the hotspot definition. At that time, there were two Western Ghats and Eastern Himalaya. So hotspots are those areas where biodiversity is rich, the threatened species, endemic species is rich, the changes of land use are taking substantially. By definition, it is 70% of the actual habitat is being changed. Also, it still exists human pressure. So because of these definitions and criteria, they called it biodiversity hotspots. Challenges that emerged, and ATREE was established to look at the science behind it, complexity behind it, and address these challenges to look at the biodiversity laws and work with the community and then address community challenges. Yeah.
So the Himalayan initiative focuses a lot on local stewardship. Why is why are local communities so important for the conservation of forests and other protected areas in the Eastern Himalayas?
Local stewardship is important because, as I've already mentioned, the Eastern Himalaya region co-evolved with community. If you look at the history, if you look at the anthropological dimension, then many cultural ethnic groups and cultural evolution took place. There is a very strong link between community and nature. Many aspects, they are animistic, they worship nature, dependency, their livelihood to nature is much more higher compared to other urban areas. So in some cases, it's 80% to 90% of direct interaction are there. Thinking that when you need some resources for sustainable use, then you have to take care of that also. So that's why the cultural dimension is enriching, the ethical practices are being practiced. So that's why there's a state worship, local state worship in nature, which brings a good example where the community and nature are being linked and then sustained for longer period of time. Yeah.
What misconceptions do policymakers have about community-led conservation, and how can the policy be improved regarding community conservation in Northeast India?
Yeah, what type of misconception you are referring, I don't know, but it depends upon how you narrate. There are instances where community are tagged as enemy to nature, or enemy to protected area, or enemy to animals. In reality, if you look at the global scenario, almost 80% of the global biodiversity is conserved by 30% of traditional people and with traditional knowledge and indigenous people. So that narrative depends upon who is narrating, but the contribution towards biodiversity conservation is much more widely contributed by indigenous people. And there's a realization that traditional knowledge system, indigenous people are instrumental in conserving biodiversity. So that depends upon the narratives, what other people think. But actual reality is local stewardship are there, and the indigenous people and local communities are substantially contributing to biodiversity conservation.
So the Himalayas is often known as a third pole. So can you talk about how climate change is impacting biodiversity conservation and livelihoods in the Eastern Himalayas?
That is quite evident. That is emerging since 2007. People are sensitized about it. It is emerging as a major challenge. If you look at the recent development and science, it entails that in 2000, by the end of this century, then 30% to 40% of the glacier lakes will be gone from the Himalayan range. So this is evident that is taking place. It's largely what science says is largely because of the elevation dependent warming. In a simple word, it says that if it is warm by 1 degree centigrade in the lowland Tarai area, then it will be 1.5 degree at the higher elevation because of the elevation dependent warming. So because of this elevation dependent warming, there's a higher melting rate of glaciers taking place. On a short-term basis, there is a higher volume of water coming up. But since the precipitation trend is changing, uh, longer still of dryness, and then all of a sudden there is a rainfall. So this sort of change in precipitation pattern is bringing a lot of flash floods and other detrimental effects, including landslides and other things. So definitely the climate change is there, is happening, is evident. The frequency of disaster are increasing. The fatality and number of damage done to people, the property, and the vegetation and biodiversity is also increasing. So definitely that entails that the climate change is happening and is bringing visible impact in the mountain range, including Himalaya.
So, what are some measures which can be done to mitigate the impact of climate change on biodiversity in the region?
It is quite complex. Actually, you can say that there are terms used: coping, adaptation, and mitigation. Coping means, when there is a landslide or when there is a flash flood, then you go to safer place, be there for a certain time, and once it is settled, you come back. So that is a coping strategy where you cope up with the instant situation. Adaptation is to look at the situation and then think about natural calamity that is frequently coming. And mitigation means how to mitigate this kind of incident in future. Many instances, the whole mitigation aspect is not within our reach. So it has to be done at the global level. Carbon emission need to be reduced, should be emission measures at larger scale. The natural fuel system, the carbon emission system, deforestation rate need to be minimized. And also at our part, if we preserve our nature, do afforestation, and look at the possible means of contributing to mitigation measures. So those kind of things are there, but it is not limiting to us. We have to work at the global level, and the global community should contribute substantially, bring the possible changes that we are anticipating. Yeah.
So, one of ATREE's flagship initiatives is the Resilient Himalayas, a participatory evidence-based approach to landscape restoration project. So, what prompted this initiative, and how does this approach to restoration differ from most conventional programs?
Actually, we started, as I've already mentioned, we started our activity in 1998 in Eastern Himalaya when the office was in Bagdogra. This program was supposed to look at the Eastern Himalayan Biodiversity Hotspot, as I have already mentioned. After working for almost 28 years in the region, we realized that looking at a small scale of interventions like community development, research, understanding the value of nature is not going to work. We have to look at the holistic picture in an integrated manner and not limiting to a small portion of Eastern Himalaya, because our intervention in the past was in Darjeeling, Sikkim, Himalaya, as well as some parts of Northeast states. At present, the issue and challenges faced are at the Indian Himalayan region. This Indian Himalayan region is being considered now. New initiative that we are researching to implement, which has been already developed in a strategic form, is the Himalayan Initiative, which looks after the entire Himalayan range. And why it is important and how we are trying to implement is we look at different scales. We intervene at species level. For example, we research and do interventions to preserve some of the species, including snow leopard, pangolin, many species of birds, many species of butterflies. So at the species level, we work to contribute for conservation. We also contribute at the ecosystem level. ecosystem level, in terms of forest ecosystem, in terms of agricultural ecosystem, in terms of riverine ecosystem, in terms of high altitude pasture and rangeland ecosystem. Interventions at the ecosystem level is enriching the ecosystem resilience and also interdependency of people, so that the ecosystem services, those are coming from those ecosystems, are sustained over the period of time, enriched. We also work at the larger landscape level, where we try to define this as a multifunctional landscape, because any landscape is also home for biodiversity, it is home for human beings, it is home for other animals and plants. There is a different type of functions happening. We get water from it, we get oxygen from it, we get nutrient from the soil. So to look at the functional, have to look at the different scale, much more larger than the ecosystem and at the landscape level, where protected areas, conservation corridors, where movement of animals are taking place, where no human wildlife interactions are happening, how to address those if it is a negatively impacted to community. There is a shortage of water, then what to do. If there is a drying of the springs, what to do. Those kind of multifunctionality is being looked at the level. Our flagship species, you have already mentioned that we do a project like Action for Mountain and People, Resilient Himalaya programs are there. Action for Mountain and People is integrated program where conservation and development are interfaced. The Resilient Himalayan project is largely looking at the restoration of degraded ecosystems. So those are the flagship species, but it's a program, but we also work at different levels, including genetic diseases, looking at the scrub types, looking at the different type of other means of agricultural practices, farming system, climate resilience adaptation practices, those kind of things, including water dynamics and water resource management. Yeah.
So, ATREE is also working on incorporating agroforestry into its initiatives across Himalayas. Can you just talk about some of these initiatives and how agroforestry can support biodiversity conservation and make more resilient livelihoods?
Yeah, no, agroforestry has been and will be an important component of biodiversity. Our narrative, when we talk about biodiversity, it seems to be biodiversity is a wildlife, it's the tiger, it's the rhinoceros, it's the panda, the snow leopard, protected area or forest. Actually, biodiversity is everything. System, as I've already talked to you, the agrobiodiversity that our food system depends upon, our land races, our traditional agricultural practices, they also enrich biodiversity in all possible ways. I've already indicated earlier that Eastern Himalaya is rich in culture because they bring different agricultural practices, food habits, food culture. The original biodiversity that is in the wild is also enriched through biological diversity through agrobiodiversity system. It is important is if you look at each elevation zones, then there is a different food habits traditionally being practiced. Lowland area is normally a rice eater community. Mid hills are maize eater, buckwheat eater, millet eater community. And then high altitude areas are the wheat and other flours that are available in high altitude areas. So this food system is there because they contribute to the needed requirement of energy and nutrient that are required for each of these elevations strength. Things are changing. People are trying to eat rice three times a day, even at the high altitude region. The agricultural practices are given up. These kind of things are bringing some level of food insecurity and nutrient insecurity. And our research earlier, when I was at what it also bring that because of the nutrient insufficiency, people's health issues are also emerging. They are stunted, they are not naturally grown up to the level that should be. So those kind of things are also happening. And what we are doing from our side is with the Ministry of Environment and Forest supported project, we are trying to understand the complexity and interaction between the agriculture and people's perspective, call it farm to forest. The forest and farm interaction and linkages are contributing to human society in terms of food security, in terms of agricultural practices, in terms of nutrient security, and how these interventions and our understanding could contribute to preservation of traditional land races, crop diversity, and traditional practices and the agriculture that was there. So those kind of interventions are worked out and being intervened from our side to encourage as well as preserve the traditional agricultural practices.
So, on a similar note, rangelands and pastoralism have often been ignored in conservation. Why are they so important for biodiversity more broadly? And also, how have they shaped the Eastern Himalayan landscape?
Yeah, actually, as I've already mentioned you, if you look at the altitude rangeland, there are different aspects one can narrate. It is also a place where permafrost are housed. Means during the winter season, there's snowfall, and then those snowfalls are then hardened and then kept in under soil or kept in different forms as a snow or glacier or any other hardened form, which supplies water for rest of the time, summer period. So that is also one important function of high altitude areas where storage of snows and ice are being contributed. Is it is also one of the most important agricultural practices being practiced. For example, sheep herding, yak herding, agropastoral practices are there, and the whole aspects of cultural diversity, different type of yak herding community like Gadis, Mongpas, Laksungpas, Lachenpas, those kind of people are there forever. Those richness of traditional practices, those richness of our heritage is being preserved by these people. Along with them, they also bring craft, handicraft making process, milk churning process, animal husbandry and other craft making artisans, artisanal skills and other things. These people who are living in this high altitude rangeland, they are also thriving. They are also a thriving culture. They are also a thriving people living there. The third one is they are also a custodian of biodiversity out there. They live with yak, they live with sheep, but also they live with snow leopard, they live with other ungulates where interactions are happening. And in many instances, they try to preserve animals because in high altitude region, mostly the religion followed are Buddhist. And you might be knowing that Buddhism doesn't allow to kill any animal. So when this kind of mixture of different practices are there, so obviously this important ecosystem, which are normally people see barren land or wasteland or not useful in terms of many aspects, but is actually a very fundamental ecosystem which gives us water. Also the rangeland and the wetland that are there in high altitude region is also source of carbon sequestration. Not believe that some of the rangeland and grassland and some of the wetlands also sequester carbon more than forests. So this kind of functions they play. So that's why it is important us in the Himalaya to sustain ecosystem services as well as sustain water services and many other cultures. Thank you.
So, can you just talk about what are the primary threats to the socio-ecological landscape, such as the rangelands?
Primary threats are a couple of them. Actually, if you look at the interaction with herding community in the recent time, here in Sikkim and in many areas, including Ladakh, Himachal, is an increasing number of feral dog, which are bringing damage to the herding communities, their animals, their calves being hunted by these feral dogs. So this is one an emerging new trend that is coming up. Huge trend of out migration are not interested doing the traditional practices of herding. So when these youths are out of that business, then the whole culture and the aspects of herding and living in the mountains are also becoming challenges because people or the youngsters, they don't want to face with this harsh situation which their parents and grandparents have faced. The other one challenge is definitely, I have already indicated, the climate change is bringing additional challenges to live in this already harsh conditions. The precipitation pattern is changing. You might be knowing that Ladakh area, the Jammu and Kashmir area used to be dry area, hardly any rainfall, but now it's raining like cats and dogs. And there's a flash floods happening. The huge damage happening to the community, the livelihood, the property. So those kind of changes are also happening. Last but not the least is also some of the development aspiration that we foresee is also bringing changes. Bringing roads and railways in the fragile ecosystem is also bringing some challenges. Hydropower dams are being constructed in a fragile ecosystem in a larger scale than anticipated. Those kind of challenges are also there. So definitely some challenges are also there which are to be considered in a scientific way. We can assess that, understand what is the fragility, how much carrying capacity, what can be done and what cannot be done. So those kind of things need to be addressed and taken care of.
Yeah, I think I agree with many of this. I've noticed these threats when I visited Ladakh last time. There was a lot of rain when I visited Changtang Sanctuary, and even the locals were quite confused on how to manage their daily life with the rain.
Yeah.
Can you just talk about some of the initiatives being done by ATREE to help conserve rangelands?
At present, we have two broad initiatives, I can say you. Is in Ladakh, where we are trying to work with the local community, bring some sort of incentive-based intervention so that the yak herding community can still sustain their activities. We are adding some value addition to the leather that is coming from yak after they're either died or taken the meat. Huge initiatives taken by reviving the art culture and craft culture from where they are using yak wools, adding value to their traditional system, making a little bit of modern design, and then linking that with the market so that emerging youths who are not at all interested in yak herding per se can see the incentive, look at the possibilities of having a good market for fashion, for different type of garments, for different type of handicrafts, and then they can sustain that. They're also trying to add on some of the technologies to improve milk production system, bring some milk products national as well as global level, some good products like good quality yak cheese, those kind of aspects are being explored. Sikkim, we are closely working with the local communities to, again, doing a more or less similar thing, but more so in conserving snow leopard through community stewardship. Community stewardship, we are contributing to coral development so that their animals are being safe from the attack of feral dog as well as snow leopard and other animals. We are also trying to develop the skills or revive the skills of artisans which are fading away so that it can revive and sustain. Those kind of interventions are being worked out. And also awareness and understanding related to hydrology. What is the state of snow and how it is important for us? Those kind of interventions are being worked out in the high altitude rangeland areas. Yeah.
So, the Himalayan initiative also works a lot to mitigate human-elephant interactions, which are becoming increasingly common in the Eastern Himalayas. Why is this issue intensifying? And do you think the current mitigation measures are enough?
It's a tricky thing. Actually, human elephant interaction or human wildlife interaction in general is not only in Eastern Himalaya, it is a global issue now. We are surprised that in recent year, in 2002, when this Kunming Montreal Biodiversity Global Framework was prepared, then one of the target 4, very categorically insists that human wildlife conflict should be addressed at the global level. So that is one of the targets. It has taken a global stage in terms of its severity and in terms of its priority for intervention. Having said that, it is also important that we need to know two facets. Now, we are emphasizing on conservation. You might be knowing that there is a target of doubling the tiger population in 10 years. There is a massive conservation efforts for rhinoceros. There's a massive conservation effort for a tiger, the massive conservation effort for other species, including red panda or any other species that are there. In one way, in one hand, it is increasing. The populations are increasing. I can give you an example that 30 years back, the elephant population in North Bengal used to be around 60, 65, maximum seasonally 90. But the same population, if you look at the present scenario, is around 600. So that level of increment in terms of species populations are happening. and the population is increasing. And then definitely when the carrying capacity of their natural habitat within the protected areas are not enough for food and prey, then definitely is a tendency to come out and interact with people. So definitely one is conservation success stories are bringing additional or increasing the population, is forcing animal to come out of the protected areas. Many protected areas, there are some encroachment area interventions or natural habitat is being destroyed or not maintained properly. More importantly, because of the human population increment over the period of decades, so the human populations are also developing their habitation in the corridors where it used to move across. So there are factors which are bringing this interaction between human wildlife. That's quite common. But as you have also mentioned that what is the means to address, there are a number of initiatives taken by different communities, different organizations, different scientific communities, where deterrent with honeybee, deterrent with chili to elephant, those kind of experiments are being done. But now one can say that there's no silver bullet means which can control human wildlife conflict. Thing is, there's no way out except to have a coexistence mechanism developed, level of tolerance of local community to wildlife, and some level of technological advancement and initiatives to deter them, or at least bring warning to the community that yeah, this kind of animals are coming towards your village, kind of communities are coming to your farmland. So please be aware, and some sort of controlling mechanism is the only way out now one can see. But if the policy allows for selective culling, selective sterilization for those species which are exponentially increasing their population, that could be one possibility. But for that, we need to change the policy at national level. So these are some of my reflections.
So many parts of the Himalayas are bordering neighboring countries such as Nepal and Bhutan, especially in the eastern Himalayas. So can you talk about why transboundary conservation is so important for the landscape, and what are some best practices to promote better transboundary conservation?
Yeah, I happened to be part of these initiatives when I was in AC mode called Conservation Initiatives. That initiative, what we have done is we brought Nepal, Bhutan, and India together to design some interventions that is compatible from each individual country level interventions. The reason behind that is contiguous habitat, movement of animals from one country to another. There are documentation that just recently, 2 days or 3 days back, there is a documentation of takin, Mismi takin, coming from Bhutan to Sikkim and passing one river. These are happening. There are incidents of snow leopard being radio colored in Nepal and which are seen in Sikkim in the Kanchenjunga Biosphere Reserve. So those kind of movement of animals are being reported, are being recorded as well. And since the habitat is contiguous, since their habitat range is quite big in terms of snow leopard, in terms of tiger, in terms of elephant, they move from one country to another. Elephant goes from Assam to Nepal and then goes back to Assam. So this, and more so because Nepal, eastern part of Nepal, Sikkim and Darjeeling, North Bengal, and then Bhutan is the same catchment area for Brahmaputra Basin. So whatever ecosystem services, water services, nutrient flow, many other aspects are being generated in the mountains are also contributing to lowland areas, including lowland areas of Indo-Gangetic Plain from Indus and Brahmaputra. It is also contributing to Bangladesh in terms of water resources. So there is a huge flow of ecosystem services from one state to another state and from one country to another country. For the sustainability of these ecosystem services, without cooperation, without scientific backup, without bringing stewardship by different countries together, it's quite impossible to sustain this and preserve this land. So that's why this transboundary initiative between Nepal, India, and Bhutan were initiated, and many contributions are being made so far. And hopefully, this kind of initiatives will sustain and remain forever to sustain our ecosystem from the Himalayas. Thank you.
You were recently selected as a scoping expert for the next IPBES global assessment. What does this role involve?
IPBES is something like IPCC of climate change. It's related to one scientific body which documents what is the state of biodiversity and ecosystem services in different forms. For example, there's a first biodiversity assessment done in 1919 that was published in 2019. It took around 4 years to compile, something like IPCC report. Similarly, there's other series of report that came in for pollination, that came in for biodiversity and business, that came in for many other topical things. And fortunately, I was also part of the lead author for the first assessment of IPBES global assessment. And this second global assessment study is to know what is the changes that is happening over the period of time and what are the priorities we need to give. So if we have to do a comprehensive assessment, review, analysis, meta-analysis, and analysis in terms of global biodiversity state and the state of knowledge, then what should be the priority? So our role as a scoping was to come up with the content that which should be focused and which should be prioritized in the next report is already on the way. So we have given some priority areas, including priorities of mountain ecosystem, including priorities of climate change impact on biodiversity, priorities on impact of climate change on ecosystem services and human well-being. So those kind of priorities were projected, and then a draft content was prepared as the scoping report, and that is given to the secretariat. And based on that scoping study, the full assessment report is being designed in chapter-wise. So that's the contribution I could make. Thank you.
So, what are some policy changes which you think India needs to implement to better conserve the Himalayas?
Actually, India is already doing quite a bit. If you look at recent mission, national mission on Himalayan studies, and many other missions are emphasizing on Himalayan ecosystem and its fragility. Specifically, there is already a ministry formed for DONIER, the Northeastern Region's conservation and development aspects. A little bit of more emphasis is needed to look at what is the state of ecosystem degradation, what is the state of human-wildlife interaction, in senses knowingly or unknowingly, retaliatory killings are happening. Some of the development activities like expansion of train line from narrow gauge to broad gauge is increasingly bringing some of the incident of elephant killing. Things are changing because now this artificial intelligence way of kind of sensitization as well as monitoring the movement of animals are also being done. But many more need to be done in terms of emphasizing on what the state of ecosystems are, each of these ecosystems which are fragile. For example, high altitude rangelands, high altitude wetlands, what is the state of cryosphere, what is happening to the glaciers. Those need to be very critically and closely monitored. And some of the policies that need to be look at it is have a separate lens to look at the Himalayan region, because Himalayan region is some of the policies which are made for the rest of the country might not be relevant. So if there is a very specific policy that encourages mountain ecosystem to be preserved, mountain ecosystem services to be used, and a means of sustainability, those kind of policy, the local stewardship, then the human rights, the land rights, and those kind of aspects might help so that the sense of belonging could contribute to biodiversity conservation.
And how can individuals contribute to the Himalayan initiative at ATREE or Himalayan conservation more broadly?
At individual level, one can do many things. Actually, whole conservation efforts start from individual level only. For example, at present, Himalayan region is being attracted for tourists. You can see a huge number of tourists going to Kashmir, a huge number of going to Leh Ladakh, Himachal, here in Darjeeling, here in Sikkim. Those tourists who are coming to our region request not to bring waste, or even if you bring waste, manage it to bring back to a safer place. Don't throw everywhere. Don't litter everywhere. So make our region and our Himalayan region waste free. So that is one humble request that I would like to make. One is definitely our own people living in the region, and our youths also need to be sensitized to make our heritage safe, make our biodiversity preserve, and avoid over exploitation. We need interaction and dependency on natural resources, but how much need to be extracted, how much need to be kept for the future generation, that need to be thought in. Some of the policymakers need to come forward and provide some very strict regulatory mechanism. Illegal poaching, for example, illegal logging, for example, as I have already indicated, that some of our heritage, like land races that used to be here for maize, for buckwheat, for millet, for potato, for different type of agricultural practices that used to be here need to be preserved so that our land races and biodiversity could remain here. We can proudly use that and depend on that. So those kind of interventions might be important at the individual level. Thank you.
And my final question is, what have been some of your most prominent challenges and most memorable moments from your conservation career? Both
Yeah.
positive and negative.
Actually, I happen to be a coordinator for Transboundary Landscape at ECMOD. Then bringing high level of policy makers from the Ministry of Government of India, from the Ministry of Bhutan, from the Ministry of Nepal, and bringing them on one platform, and bringing the other scientific community to rationalize that this transboundary landscape is important. It is to be preserved by all the three countries, bringing compatibility in terms of the conservation effort. And those kind of things were quite challenging. Took us almost 9 to 10 years to reach to a stage where this consensus was developed, and the government of India, government of Nepal, and government of Bhutan endorsed this concept of transboundary cooperation. So that was in 2000. So that is one of the most memorable stage or time for me to get a success, that if you really put an effort to bring with a good science, a good rationale, and good justification to bring three countries together to preserve this wider landscape, which is a shared landscape or shared heritage, is possible. The other side is it is not that easy to work at the community level, because when we work at the community level, there's a huge trend of aspiration for development. If we say that it is better not to have road and conserve your surrounding vegetation, or it is better to have traditional crop even though it is less profitable, so those kind of things are quite tricky. Nowadays people want cash crop system, which makes easy money in a faster period of time, and our traditional crop system is quite time taking. It takes 6 months to 9 months time. Our traditional crop system doesn't have a very good market, except it is tagged as a organic one, and the market is a high-end market channel mechanism. So to convince people to preserve traditional system, traditional land races, and not to go for commercial agricultural practices, not to aspire too much for road development or railway development or dam development or any other land use change that is hampering this fragile ecosystem, is quite challenging, and quite often we face challenges to address those issues at the community level.
So that was the final question I had for you today. Thank you so much for taking time out for this podcast.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Anis.